Cool. Hi everybody, welcome to today's session. We will be doing more of our basic sessions, working on a little bit of vertical sat and reset stuff. So quickly, just to recap our, should move on to it next, our forcing. So we're just going to watch a quick video on here which explains some of the forcing.
So if you look at our players here, if the mark stands directly in front of the person with the frisbee, it's really easy for the cutter to cut to either side and get the disc. They can cut for a forehand throw and be thrown the disc, or they can cut for a backhand throw and get the disc. And because they have both of these options, it's really hard for their defender to know which way to guard them, and they're sort of always chasing, and because of that, that cutter will always be open. But if the mark and the defender are on the same page about what side of the field they want the action to happen on, or what side of the field they're trying to force the disc into, it's going to be really easy for the mark to push the disc in that direction and for the cutter to be in that space. So the force is a way of playing defense where you draw an invisible line right down the field through the middle of the thrower, and you're going to say that one side of that thrower, one side of the field, is going to be the force side, and we're forcing the disc to go over there. We want the disc on that side of the field, and the other side is the break side of the field, and we don't want the disc to go over there. So if we're forcing home or to the, and the other side is the break side.
So just a note here, we call the force side the open side because it's a side which is open for the thrower to throw to, and we still call the break side because the thrower has to break their mark to try and get into this space. So just a little note that we don't normally call it the force side, we call it the open side and the break side.
The field, and we don't want the disc to go over there. So if we're forcing home or to the right side of the screen, by standing on the left side of the thrower, we're making throws to that side of the field much more difficult than if we were standing straight in front of them. And so we can start to force those throws over onto that force side of the field. And once we do that, it's very easy for our defenders to anticipate that the throws are going to go to this force side of the field. And when we position ourselves in that force side, we can usually get to those throws before the cutters can. And that's the force working. So today.
Cool. So that was a quick recap on forcing, pretty basic for any experienced people, but hopefully that makes sense for everybody else. As always, if you have any questions about anything, please type them or say them. So next up, we've got a high-level example, which is, as the person will explain, which is from the AUDL, which is Frisbee, but it's a little bit changed in rules. But they go through what we're going to do now, which is looking at our vertical stack play. So yeah, watching this.
Today we're going to be looking at the New York Empire and how they run a vertical stack offense to isolate cutters in space. So the vertical stack, also known as vert stack, is an offensive system that creates space for cutters by dividing the field into two halves. The 5 downfield cutters line up vertically in the middle of the field, and this opens up 2 half fields of cutting space on either side of the stack. From here, teams will often isolate their cutters from either the front or the back. This is because these 2 cutters have the most uninterrupted space to work with and are least likely to get called on picks.
So we normally isolate from the back of stack, so what this dude is doing, not normally from the front of stack. So always our first person, instead of having this movement, we have our first movement from the back of stack. And yeah.
In this clip, the Empire have just received the pull and immediately set up their vert stack with Grant Lindsley in the back and Jack Williams in the front.
So for everybody watching, if you look at how these people cut, it's a good way to see how high level people cut. But you see they do really fancy footwork, and they really sell both of their defenders. So if you watch out for that, and also watch out for what the person's talking about.
2 of their best cutters in the 2 primary ISO positions. Williams starts the cutting sequence faking towards the break side, then changing direction and cutting horizontally into the force side space. When the throw is in the air, watch Lindsley now setting up the next cut. In the back of the stack as the next active cutter, you typically have 2 options: come in towards the thrower or cut out into the deep space. In this case,
So this in and out thing, we would call this under, so towards the disc here, which is under, and out, which is towards our deep space, so it would be a deep cut. So if someone says come under, it means come towards the disc, and if someone says go deep, it goes deep towards our end zone that we're trying to score in.
Into the deep space. In this case, Lindsley's defender is backing him, meaning he's positioning himself between Lindsley and the attacking end zone to try and take away deep cuts. Reading his defender, Grant is...
So for experienced players, we talked a little bit about this. So we have our force here, and we have our people downfield on one side of our player, but we can also make sure our person can only get it under, or they can only get it deep. So this player, like the guy said, has highlighted that this is a really good cutter, and he doesn't want the person just to score straight away. So he's gonna stand a little bit deep of them so that they have to come under to get a disc instead of being able to go score straight away.
He's going to put on this dirty display of footwork before choosing to cut in towards Williams for the continuation. After the in cut, Connor Klein now finds himself in the back of the stack as the next active cutter. Just like Lindsley, now Klein is going to read his defender, who has positioned himself between Klein and the disc, looking to take away in cuts. Seeing this, Klein is going to take one hard jab step in, then take off deep for the next cut in the sequence. This decision to cut deep also comes from trusting your thrower and knowing their range. Klein has full confidence in Lindsley that he will put up an accurate huck if the cut is there. Without hesitation, Lindsley unloads a flick into the end zone, and the Empire score in just 4 throws. The sequence shows exactly how effectively a vertical stack offense can run, as it facilitates continuation cuts to keep the offense in rhythm. Thanks for watching, everyone, and be sure to join us next time in the Tiger Balm Film Room.
So I hope that makes sense. There's an examples of some good cutting there, and now we're just gonna go and take a look at ulti-plays, which is a slightly different way to look, and we're going to be looking at some dump reset stuff, this is really good recap for experienced players and really good to learn for any new people learning. Can everybody see my screen again?
Yep.
Cool, great. So I've set up here, take a look at it in the chat as well. The link should be there. So if I'm going too fast, or if you want to read exactly what I've written in the top a little bit slower, then feel free to do that. But we're just going to look at what we call a reset. So we have our nice vertical stack here. We have one person on the disc. We've got our grey people on defense, and we've got our green people on offense, and our white thing here is the disc. So we see here that we've got a force on, and because we're forcing, so to throw this when we have everybody downfield on this side, which makes it a little bit harder for the green people to get free. And we have our stack with our 5 people in it, our main handler, and then we have what's called a dump here. So this dump should be standing about 5 meters away and approximately 45 degrees back from this main handler. So that's kind of our first thing. Cool. So we see that we have a nice cut from the back of stack. They went deep and came under, but it was really good marking by 7, and so they couldn't be thrown it by 1. So our 7 goes back into the stack behind our 3, and we still have 1 with the disc. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about what the dump is and why we want to reset our stall count. So our stall count is the amount of seconds that we have the disc for. So when we're outside, this is a maximum of 10 seconds that we can have it for, and normally it's called by our force. So 1 at this point would count it in. They would go stalling 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10 in second intervals. So by this point, we've already had 7 that did a cut and come under. By this point, the stall count will probably be about 5 or 6 seconds. So green on the disc decides he wants to, wants to reset the stall count. And what it means by reset the stall count is they want to change who has the disc so that it goes back down to 0. And they can do this by throwing to another player. The easiest player to throw to is our green 2 here, because the grey team are less worried about throwing backwards. So throwing backwards, the grey team is like, well, the other team's going backwards, it doesn't really matter. So what's going to happen next is our green 1 turns to look at our green 2. So our green 1 here, who had the disc, turns and looks at green 2, and they want to initiate green 2 to start doing something, to start moving about so they get 3 and can be thrown to. So our green 1 turns and looks at green 2 and initiates them by a fake, which we practiced on Wednesday, and try and keep eye contact with the person as well. Green 2 then uses this big space behind green 1 to get free. So if we look at what they did in this, they came up a little bit and then came back, and they were free, so they got thrown the disc. And we've managed to reset the stall count and everything went really well. Cool, so that's one way to do a reset when our person's in the middle of the pitch. We have a cut commander, it's not free, we're still in the middle of the pitch, so our 2 can move, get the disc, and we've reset, and we've moved back a little bit, but that's okay because we still have more time now to have another cut go. Cool. So we've reset the disc, and when we go backwards and reset the disc, we always look for our front of stack, so this person here, to go back and get the disc. So this is what's happening here. There's quite a lot of stuff moving, but 2 gets the disc, and then 3 is gonna come back and get the disc, and our 1 is just gonna clear out the way to the front of stack. So the stall count is now reset. We then look for a cut from our front of stack, which is our green 3, he was just here. Green 3 gets the disc, and green 1 moves out the way to the front of stack. And we now have what we had at the start. We had, I think the next one actually is, we now have what we have at the start. Everybody's moved up the pitch, and we now have a main handler, a dump, and a nice vertical stack again. And we've moved up the pitch a little bit, which is good. So yeah, we're now, however, on the sideline. So if you see, our disc is right on this sideline here, so it's a little bit trickier. So our green 6 does a cut, it comes under and then goes deep, but is also marked really well and can't be thrown to by number 3. So because they can't be thrown to, 6 just clears out into the stack, and the green 3, who had the disc just here, green 3, their stall count has been going higher by the time as the number 6 has been cutting. So they again are looking to reset the disc. So they want to reset that stall count, so we're back to 0 and we have a new person on the disc. So what they want to do is, we're on the sideline and the reset is slightly different. So instead of just looking at the person and getting them move into a big space, we don't really have that big space here because we have a sideline in the way, and we can't go off pitch. So they first look to throw straight to green 2 if green 2 is free to throw to. So if in this situation here, 2 is free, so they just throw the disc straight away, and we've reset the disc and everything's good again. If this is not the case, so if this 2 mark is closer, like they are now, this is not possible. So what happens is, if I just go back to here, what happens is our 3 will look at 2 and they will do a fake, so they will look as if they're throwing to them, and then 2 will go up the line. And by up the line, we mean they run towards the sideline and they hopefully get the disc before they get there. So this is what happens here. 2 has been faked, and so they run up the line, and 3 has thrown the disc. only if they're free. Cool. So imagining they're not free and to run up the line, but they can't be thrown it because the other defender marked them out. Our next step is for our front of stack to then come back and for everything to then happen again. So our person went up the line. We're imagining it's not being thrown. Our front of stack here is going to come under towards the disc, and they're going to be thrown it if they're free, and we get back to the same situation where we have one person in the middle of the pitch who's the handler and one person who's the dump. Cool. If that's not free, because our one was marked really well, we then have the same thing happened again. So we have one go up the sideline because they're faked by 3. So 3 would fake at 1. Imagine they're throwing to them, but not actually throw it. And then 1 would then run up to the sideline and get the disc. And everybody can now move up the pitch, and we've now over halfway, which is really good. So our resetting is a way to reset the stall count, move through the pitch, and it's really handy when we're on the sideline because we can move up the pitch without getting stuck here. Cool. So if we just go back through and watch this all a little bit faster. So we have our 7, did a cut, not free. We've got our 2, getting the dump and throwing it to 3. 6 did a cut, not free. It wasn't free for 2. It wasn't free for there. 1 comes back and gets it. We're imagining it's not free. 1 goes up the line. It's free. Everybody resets, and we're at the end. Cool. So that is kind of, I know it's a lot of information for everybody who's new, and hope that's a good recap for anybody who's experienced. But feel free to take a little bit more time to read through and go through all of our things here. But what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some more clips, and we're first just going to look at all of that in real life game situations, and then we're going to ask some questions about how we can improve some videos at the end. So to start off with, we have an upline reset score. So we have this person here, sorry it's a bit jumpy this clip, don't really know why. We have this person here who's going to pick up the disc. So this is Nathan, he's going to pick up the disc. This dude here is on the sideline, so ignore them, they are off the pitch. Nathan is going to pick up the disc. We have Will here, who's the dump, and we just go through. And we've got a nice vertical stack with Tom at the front of the stack. And this is quite nice positioning, we've got lots of space here to move, and we're going to see one person cut. Andy cuts, but Nathan didn't want to throw that. He decides he's going to look at his dump. So the cuts weren't free. We're like, no, didn't want to throw that. Nathan turns and looks at his dump. He then fakes, so he looks like as if he's going to throw, which is what he does there. Will then moves because of that fake and goes up the line, so towards this sideline here. And if Will is free, Nathan throws the disc. Will's free, and so Nathan throws the disc. And like we saw in the thing, everybody then moves up the pitch and moves around here. So everybody gets back into the stack. We have Nathan, who's the dump again. We have our stack. So no one really cut, or I think Andy wasn't free. So Will decides he's going to do the same thing. They're on the sideline still. Will is going to look at Nathan. He did a nice big fake. Nathan is then going to go up the line, and he gets the disc. And then we have everybody move through again to get our nice stack. We have Will, who's the new dump. and we have a cut from Drew that goes into the end zone, and it's a score. So that's a really good example of using those up-line cuts and that reset to move up the pitch really quickly. So we just watch that through from start to finish again. Everybody moves through and goes up pitch. We've got a fake to go up pitch again, and then everybody moves through and we have Drew cut up into the end zone for a score. So that was a really nice example of just using that up line if you're on the sideline. So this is more when we're in the middle of the pitch and we're looking at our front of stack swing. So I'm on the sideline now, but what we see is we have a cut here which is marked out, so I don't want to throw that. And instead I'm going to look at my dump here, and because my dump is free, there's lots of space in between here, I'm going to throw it straight to my dump instead of faking them. Oh no, that's not what happens. I should have probably thrown that. But not quite free, I fake it. My new front of stack comes back and they get the disc. And once they get the disc, like we saw before, we want our continuation, so our cut from the stack to be from our front of stack. So this is going to be Jasmine here, and you'll see Jasmine, when this player gets the disc, Jasmine is already thinking, it's me next, and she cuts out into space, ready to get the disc next. And we have a nice continuation across. Cool. And then we have the same thing going on here. So now we're quite close to this sideline. We're going to use our faking for me to move up pitch, but I think I run into the person, and so I get a bit confused. And then a little bit of a misthrow, but that was a nice person coming from front of stack. So if we watch that again. So the cut's not on, probably should have thrown that, but it's faked, they go up the line, front of stack comes back, and then our new front of stack comes back to get the continuation. It's not on, and so I go up the line, and the next person comes back. A little bit of a misthrow, but that could be really nice. So we're going to now look at a few clips to see what could be improved. So I want you all to look out and see from what we've been talking about, if you have some comments or some suggestions about stuff that could be improved. And you can see that doing a proper fake can move the mark on the dump, making it easier to be free on the upline throw. Yes, that is very good. From Dan, sorry, I didn't read your comment slightly earlier. Let's see if we can find someone doing a proper fake. So we can look at back to this one, and we just see an example of what Dan was talking about in the chat on Discord about a person doing a proper fake to move the thrower. So yeah, in that example there, we have our force who is kind of in the way of Nathan at the moment, but Nathan makes a really big fake at will, so the force thinks they're going to throw that, and the force moves all the way to the right, so he can have a really easy throw upfield, which is really good. Cool, thanks for pointing that out, Dan. Ooh. Cool. So, our first clip of what can be improved. So we're just going to watch it through. We're going to watch it through twice. This is quite jumpy. And then we're going to see what can be improved. Cool. So first time through. We're looking at things that can be improved, mainly where we have the disc and where we have the dump. So nothing to do with cutting upfield. Cool. Does anybody have any suggestions or comments on what can be improved in this clip? If no one says anything, I'll pick people. Any suggestions? Dan Jones is typing. So we have Jasmine, who picks up the disc, and cut from Sasha, which is marked out, which is okay. Then we have Jasmine, who then looks at her dump. Maybe she could have thrown this, but she decides it's not free enough, and therefore she fakes it at Val to go up pitch. What could have maybe happened, because we're kind of not super on the sideline, is Val could have used the space behind Jasmine, like we saw in one of the, like we saw when I was going through the ulti-play stuff, to instead use this space around here to get free instead of just going up the line and running away. So this was nice. We had Jessie, who saw that is a little bit mushy here, but she saw that no one was coming back, so she saw that she needed to come back so that Jasmine could throw the disc. So that was a really good reset. We reset the stall count. Jasmine was on about 5 or 6, and now we're back down to 0 because Jessie now has the disc. So that was pretty good. We have a cut which isn't quite free, and Jessie decides to look at her dump. So there's one thing which I think could be improved on this dump. Does anybody have any suggestions?
It makes it quite difficult. Is it Jasmine as the dump? Just because she's quite far away, and if she tries to go up the line, she's got to make up so much ground. So it's probably easier for her to just kind of duke around and get free there. But then the force is also stopping that.
Yeah.
So potentially Jasmine needs to be a lot closer to start with.
Yeah. So if we have Jasmine come, so she's a little bit closer. So at the moment she's probably like 7-ish meters away, and she can bring even closer. So she's at that 4 to 5 meter point. So if she was standing about here instead of this far away, she would have a lot easier. Make it a lot easier for herself if she wants to come up the sideline, or if she wants to come back around here to get the disc here. So yeah, that's definitely an improvement that could happen. And then looking at this movement that goes on here, does anybody have anything that maybe should have happened instead of Jasmine kind of moving about here? There's maybe something that she could have done instead. Ollie Goldstone, do you have any suggestions?
Could she have carved the line instead of going kind of back and forth where she was?
Yeah, so definitely could have cut up the line. So because Jessie had quite a strong force here, so she was kind of stopping anything over here. If Jasmine instead came up the line, I'll just go back a little bit, instead come up the line up to like about here, she maybe could have got a little bit more free and someone else could have come back. Another thing Jasmine could have done, because Jessie isn't right on the sideline, like where they're filming from is on the sideline, which is where my mouse is, which is like down here. So Jasmine, if she was closer, she could have had an opportunity to come back round and get the disc round here, which would have made it a lot easier for Jessie to reset the disc. Cool. So good points from everybody there, and we'll take a look at the next one. But this is a really nice perk that Jessie puts up. She sees that this isn't on, and instead she sees someone going deep, and she throws it deep instead. So yeah, if the reset isn't working, there's definitely other options to take as well. Number 2. Cool. So if I can have, if Ray, if you can be the person who tells me the improvement for this one, so you can type it. Small point is Dan. Cool. So I'll play this clip. So we'll just watch it twice through. So that was quite a short clip, but some good resets going on there. So we have our vertical stack here. I think Neil, which is this back stack person, maybe does a cut. Dan doesn't think it's free, and so he looks at his dump. Cool. So, if Ray is listening, / can hear me, does Ray know anything that can be changed about this clip?
I can't find the chat button, but I have no idea.
Okay, so if we watch this clip again, if we go back to the beginning, the first thing that we talked about when we looked at our resetting the disc was if we have a free person as dump, we should just throw it to them, because then we reset the disc straight away and we don't have to bother with anything else happening. So what Dan does here is instead he fakes at Carver even though he was very, very free, and he keeps faking even though he's still free. And then Carver instead has to then run up the line, and he still gets free and it's a nice reset. But if we went all the way back to here and Dan just threw this instead, we wouldn't have had to, it would have been a lot safer throw. He just throws to a free person instead of having to wait for Carver to do some movement. So yeah, if someone's free, throw it to them, which is the main thing. But cool. But the rest of this clip is nice, and it's a really nice throw up here. For anybody who did our session on Wednesday, this throw is what's called a roll curve. So it kind of, you can see here, it kind of rolls into Carver, because you can see the underside of the disc, which means it's going like, it's hard to see on the screen, but instead of it just being flat and going, it goes round, up and round and back into him. So that's one of our throws that we can use to kind of help with this. Cool. And I think this is our final one, maybe. Cool. So if we have Trish and we could have Trish and Edward. If both of you guys look at this and if Edward, there's a turnover at the end of this clip, if you can tell me why you think the turnover happened. And if Trish, you could give any pointers for our resetting throughout it. If you don't want to talk, just type them. But we'll watch through it twice, and you guys can look at that. So that was once through. We'll just watch through it again. Once you have any idea of either why there's a turnover, Edward, or some improvements on the rest of the clip, Trish, you can type them. Cool. So do either of you have any improvements or reasons why the turnover happened?
I guess the person who tried to make the cut when it was turned over, they were fairly well marked, so the throw probably wasn't on. So they should have probably either like gone back to the dump to reset, or like someone else made another cut, but I don't think the throw like was necessarily on.
Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, if we see, if I just go back to here, we have, whoa, we go to here, we have Akash who gets this, so this dude, and then we have one cut which isn't on, and then we have two cuts which go at the same time, which are both kind of not really on, and there's two defenders in the space. So exactly as you say, probably should have just faked that, so not thrown that, and then look back at our dump here, so at this player. So yeah, perfect, nice. And Trish, do you have any pointers for anything else that happens in the clip?
Dan, instead of forcing the really hard like breakthrough there, could have come back and tried to get free on the open side in the dump position.
So is this at this place just here where I'm showing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you mean? As in Dan could have come back, or I suppose Neil is also super free, so maybe Adam could have just not thrown that. Is this what you mean? Sorry.
Yeah, but it's Carver, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I couldn't see anything else. There's a cut where DeWilson gets a disc really near the end zone, but there's no cuts.
Yeah. So this is where Dan gets a disc here, and like you say, there isn't any cuts. So maybe everybody could have been a little bit faster for that. Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, I like what you said at the beginning, where, yeah, maybe this throw didn't have to be thrown. Neil, who was coming back, so this person who was coming back here, he was very free, and so maybe an easier option could have been just to throw it to Neil. Yeah, very true. Cool. So there was one other thing which I picked up on in this clip, was when we have Adam gets it nicely here, and then we have two people again who cut for this disc, so it should be the front of stack who comes back for this. So this is our continuation, and Neil starts going for it, and he should be the person going for it, but we have someone else who does it as well, fortunately who gets the disc, but make sure we only have one person doing that. Yeah, and our last thing, as Edward picked up, to be more aware of when a throw isn't free. So maybe this shouldn't have been thrown. Cool. So just to finish, does anybody have any questions or want me to recap on anything? And yeah, Dan's put some pointers out in the training chat as well. So if the training chat is under the discussion bit and then training events, and you can see it there.
I've got a question going back to the ulti plays bit actually, like a while ago. On the fake up the line when we were in the middle of the pitch, there was like, we ran like up the line and then back really sharply. So to like throw them off. So you make them think that you're going up the line. It was like stage 4, I think. And the number 2 kind of went up and then back. So is that like a standard cut, or is that just if you're poached in some way, or when do you do that or not do that?
So hopefully you can see this. But yeah, like you said, we have our person here who one wants to reset the disc, so they look to 2 here, and you can kind of do anything that means that you get free. So 2 could instead come across a little bit and then get back, or they could just run and be free to throw it, or they could come back a bit and attack forward and get it. But one thing which is good is it's a bit hard because the dump wouldn't exactly like just run across. I probably should have changed that a little bit. But this up the line, or like pushing forwards a bit and then coming back, can mean that your defender kind of thinks that you're going to run forwards. And because, like we said before, anything that means the disc goes forwards is going to be worse for the other team. So the grey will be more worried about you throwing the disc forward than there is throwing the disc back. So they're going to probably cover this up the line or forwards little movement more, and then you'll be more free coming back. So I just added that instead of just having a person just running straight across. But it's only just, you can use this whole big movement just to like run around and get free. So you can use big cuts, just like go one way, change and come back, or go forwards a little bit, change and come back. As long as you've got like a change of direction, it normally means you're going to get free. It's kind of free for all in this bit.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Anybody have any more questions? If not, Dan made a really good observation. So communication, we haven't really talked about it much here, but communication is really important when you have anything on pitch happening. So if we go back to this clip here, our upline reset, we have really good communication happening here, which is why this went so smoothly. So we've got Tom, who's the front of stack, and he's telling everybody, he's put his hand up and he's telling everybody, look, I'm the front of stack, you have to stack up behind me, and we've got a nice stack happening because we've got Tom telling people what to do. And then we can use our communication by talking, but also when we fake what Nathan does here, that's a form of communication to tell people, no, I don't want that throw, no, I want you to go up the line, and then he throws it. So using our communication of talking to people, so in this clip, I don't have sound on it, but Tom was shouting, like, I'm the front of stack, stack up everybody, stack behind me. And if we see here as well, we've got Will on disc. Will has a nice big fake, which is his form of communication towards Nathan, so he goes up the line. And then Nathan, you see, he faked again because he wasn't happy. He used his fake to tell someone that he didn't like the cut, and then he threw it into the end zone. So yeah, really important to always be talking to each other. This clip at the end, as Ed rightly showed, if we had a little bit more communication between these players, and there wasn't 2 people who went at the same time, then this would have probably been a score, instead of it being a turnover. Cool. So I think that's everything. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm gonna stop the recording there.